Hey there, and welcome to the Agentic Voice Podcast. My name is Kristen Ruiz, and I am here with my brilliant co-host, Dr. Geneva Mayne. And we also have our featured guest today, Heather Gross. And in today's episode, we are discussing resilience and the healing process for silenced voices. So let me tell you a little bit about Heather if you haven't met her yet. Heather Gross is a mind-body integrative voice therapist and holistic health coach, specializing in gender-affirming and trauma-informed voice. In addition to her background in voice therapy and vocology, Heather has sought out additional certifications and training in breathwork, yoga, mindfulness meditation, nutrition health coaching, transformational coaching, and mental health informed care. As a vocalist, a trauma survivor, and chronic pain warrior, she has become a lifelong learner of the mind-body-voice connection. And through her own vocal journey, recovery, and healing, Heather has created a unique and holistic approach to help her clients uncover their most authentic voice and heal themselves through mindful listening and self-compassion. Heather is the owner of Live Vocally, a virtual voice practice and vocal studio. So Heather, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited for our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to express my gratitude for the space that you provide for folks to share their stories and hopefully inspire others to share theirs.
Oh, we are so happy that you agreed. I mean, we haven't really had a nice sit down since we attended the Summer Vocology Institute together. So this is awesome.
Yes.
I'm really looking forward to this.
That was the last time we were all together. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to start with our first segment, which is what's new and what's good. And usually in what's new and what's good, we share whatever we're thankful for, happy about, anything exciting that's going on in our personal or professional lives or both. So for me, I'll tell you guys that I just came off a very relaxing spa weekend, which is really cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I have a really good friend who put me on to the Restore like wellness spas. Have you guys heard of these? Yes,
I don't know.
So they're like I guess wellness spas, and they offer therapies like cryotherapy and red light therapy and infrared saunas and things like that are supposed to help you with like reducing inflammation and stress management and all this kind of stuff. So I went there with her on the Friday, and I did only one therapy. I did the red light therapy, and you're like standing there almost naked, as undressed as you want to be, in like these red lights, and it's supposed to help you regulate your circadian rhythm so your sleep improves. Interestingly enough, because I've been talking about heart rate variability so much, which if you've been listening, everybody knows this is a measure of vagal tone and stress. So that's supposed to increase reducing your stress and that kind of thing, increasing the relaxation response. So I did it, and it actually worked, because I'm managing that on my Fitbit now, that my numbers for heart rate variability went up. So I'm super excited about this, and I'm thinking of getting a membership. It's really, really cool.
Cool.
I shouldn't be talking them up so much, because I mean, maybe one day they'll be a sponsor of this podcast.
Tag them.
But like, just sharing the wealth, that I'm like, this is so cool. Like, and the idea is you'll do like maybe 2 or 3 15-minute therapies a week. Like think about in the winter, if you have seasonal affect here in the Northeast, and you go under some lights and you feel better, you sleep better, reduce your stress. I think this is just potentially so good, So that was exciting for me. I enjoyed that.
Frequency therapy is like a new frontier. I can't wait until, it gets to the front lines. I think it's getting there.
Yeah. I mean, the science isn't super robust yet, I don't think. I mean, we know that like the cold water plunges and stuff help you. I was not about to go. I mean, the cryotherapy chamber was minus 157 degrees Fahrenheit. Can you imagine? So my friend did that for 3 minutes, and I'm like, I'm not brave enough, but she got a benefit. So, hey.
Yeah.
What about you, Heather? What's new? What's good?
So I've just been feeling a lot of gratitude for my voice journey, my healing journey, for the clients that I get to work with. They're amazing.
Nice.
And I'm grateful that I'm feeling well to get to do the work that I'm meant to be doing, and that I get to bring authenticity and vulnerability into the work that I do. And I'm grateful for the authenticity that my clients bring.
Mm.
Much of my focus has been on one-to-one work with clients on their individual voice and healing journeys. But I also just completed a couple certifications in health coaching and sound healing, which are modalities that have healed me. And I'm now implementing those practices into the work that I do with my clients.
Yeah, I saw you put a really cool post up on Instagram where you had some kind of a sound instrument. I don't know if it was like a bell or a
Yes.
chime. And I
It
thought,
was
this is
that.
it was so cool. Now, tell us what it was and what you were doing.
So it's a Tibetan sound bowl. I have different kinds of sound bowls and different kinds of instruments that have really helped me heal my nervous system.
Mhm.
But the one that I was using in the post was a Tibetan sound bowl. And I felt like the audio actually transferred pretty well on Instagram. So it was pretty surprising, but I like to use the sounds to ground and set the tone for a meditation or breath work.
I'm sure it's fun to do too, right?
It is so much fun. And when I'm leading a sound bath or meditation or one-on-one sound healing session, I'm really pouring all of my energy out from my heart and my soul, and I'm like right there with the people I'm sharing with, and it's completely intuitive. So I feel like you can really feel that energy.
And
Yeah.
what about you, Kristen? What's new and what's good?
Well, I kind of love, Heather, you set me up really well because you're talking about, connection and being in the moment and being present. And I know for me, that's one of the things that can feel elusive at times, and then, you catch yourself like, wait, let me come back and be in the present because that's what we have. And so this past week, it finally turned beautiful in the Northeast. So I'm outside of the city, and so I've been working in the garden. And when I'm working in the garden, whether I'm pulling weeds or planting something new, there's something where time is different. The flow is there. And it reminds me when we're in really, beautiful moments in performance. But what I have to say is that when I go to the garden, it's just, there's no prep. It's like literally just right there. And so what's been really just good and beautiful is that every morning I've been getting up at like 6 o'clock, spending a couple hours out there. And it's just being around the smells, the sounds of the birds, the whole thing, just starting the day with presence. And there's something about a garden that teaches you life lessons. It also teaches you voice lessons, but that's for another episode. Like, oh my goodness, there's so much about pruning, planting, weeding, growing, sowing,
Reaping what you sow, right?
Yes, the laws of the harvest. Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, so I think that's one thing that's really been juicy this week. And another thing that we're just a little excited about is that I'm going to talk a little lower because my daughter's in the other room. We're surprising her. She's about to turn 18. She just graduated high school. She has been dying to get back to Puerto Rico and to see some of her family there. And so we're going to surprise her with a trip in 2 weeks. And so we're very excited, about that. So that's been on our minds. Yeah. So we'll spend a long weekend there. So those are the good and new things that are just, I don't know, making life delicious. It's all about delight, right?
Sounds so good.
So let's head into our next segment. We like to call it Experience, Strength, and Hope, where we kind of talk about our expertise, our insights, our stories, our lived experience, so that we can learn from each other and share in our own connected growth. So let me ask you, Heather, can you share a little bit about how you got interested in trauma-informed voice?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like many voice therapists, voice coaches, I've been singing since childhood, probably before I can talk. I can't remember. I remember I was always humming and singing and vocalizing and pretty much always using my voice. Use of my voice has always been so intricately connected to who I am at my core. And a lot of my early memories of singing in front of an audience or in front of other people, I struggled a lot with tension in my throat, and even in safe spaces, places that I considered to be safe, like the theater, I always struggled with increasing my volume, and I couldn't yell, I couldn't scream, I couldn't belt out those high notes due to the tension that I was holding around my throat. And I just kind of thought there was something wrong with me or something wrong with my voice. And I ended up feeling a lot of shame and disappointment around my voice, disappointment that I couldn't, land those lead roles and make my voice heard. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was holding all of my physiological and emotional stress in my throat, and all of my anxiety and trauma and all of my experiences in my throat. And that's what we know now to be muscle tension dysphonia. But of course, at the time, I didn't have the terminology or the knowledge. When I was, 8 years old, I didn't know the word dysphonia. And I worked with a variety of voice teachers and voice coaches, and they've all been amazing. And I learned so many wonderful techniques. But that mind-body voice connection wasn't explored until much later in my life. And so my questions and my fascination around the voice began when I was very young, with having this physical tension around my voice. And then when I was older in undergrad, I had a traumatic experience where I really needed my voice. I really needed to scream and let someone know that I was in danger. And my voice physically wouldn't turn on. I couldn't find my breath. I couldn't find my voice. And I share this because that was the moment, that was the experience when my healing journey and my vocal healing journey really began. It was like I made a deal with my voice that we would never be silent again. And so there has been that theme throughout my life of continuously having to return to this practice of, I have to find my voice here. I have to find my voice here. I have to continue to tune into my voice. And so here I am as an SLP specializing in voice. And when I started, I knew that there was something missing from the work that I was doing, and knew I needed to integrate the modalities that have healed me into the work that I do. And here I am today.
Yeah. I really like how articulately you shared that story, because I feel like a lot of times when people experience threats, women especially, they might go into a freeze response, right? And have a loss of agency, whether it is in, running away or fighting back or screaming or whatever it is. And people can almost sometimes ask them, well, why didn't you do this? And of course, unless you know the science of trauma, and that freezes a legitimate response to a threat or danger, that question can become like a shaming question, So, anyone who's like listening to Heather share her story, who's had freeze responses, as I have had, just know that a freeze response is a legitimate response. And if someone questions you, like, well, you put yourself in danger or whatever it is, and you allowed this to happen or whatever it was, know that freeze response is a legitimate response, and regaining agency so that you can use your voice and fight back or recruit help or whatever it is something that some of us have to do, right? Some of us experience a real loss of agency and find movement, whatever form of movement, inhibited. So tell us a little bit about that part of your story, the part of regaining your voice.
Yes. So jumping off of what you were saying, I always thought that if I was in a dangerous situation, I would fight back, or I would run away, or I would scream. Being in that situation and literally not being able to move or breathe or make anything happen, it was very real. And it was my nervous system protecting me. It was my airway protecting me. It was my airway responding to danger. In a very long process.
And while you were going through that process, you still had to live life, right? Go to school,
right,
become an SLP,
right, right. Yes, I was prioritizing my career and my CF and making my dreams come true. But there were so many modalities that helped me. I always thought there would be like one thing, this will fix me or this will heal me. But it was really this idea of tuning in rather than trying to fix the pain or cover it up or make it go away, push it away. I started to listen. I started to tune in to what my body was telling me. And as I kind of moved through chronic illness and chronic pain, and my body was, I call it the voice of my body. The voice of my body was getting louder and louder and louder. And I had no choice but to slow down and listen to what that voice was telling me. And through mindfulness meditation and yoga, and by yoga, I don't mean just moving your body, but the practice of yoga, really being present and yes, practicing it on my mat, but in everyday life, and continuing to ask my body, what do you need today? What do you need to heal? What is the voice of my body telling me? And when I started to listen to that voice and I started to picture my authentic self and release stories and emotions and anything that wasn't serving me anymore and stepping into my authentic self, that was the healing for me, starting to listen rather than trying to fix, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think one of the things when you've gone through difficult, stressful, adverse circumstances is that it's hard to trust any voice.
Mm-hmm.
I look at this as like the spiritual impacts and the social impacts of trauma, because when something goes wrong, sometimes you don't know who or what to trust, and that can include yourself, right? Like,
Right.
did I do this to myself? Did I set myself up? Or, how can I trust this person or that person? Some people deal with, how can I trust God again, or higher power, or whatever they believe, So yeah, I really like that you really emphasized listening to your voice and that authentic you, because I think that's one of the most heartbreaking parts of going through difficulties is this loss of trust in yourself, You should have a healthy distrust of yourself, in the sense of, we can fool ourselves into, believing all sorts of wackadoo stuff, for sure.
Yeah.
But, fundamentally, what we believe impacts what we do, what we say, how we live. And if we can't trust our own inner voice about, what it is that we want, or, even our feelings, your feelings are barometers. Sometimes they're signals.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important to be able to trust those signals.
Mm-hmm.
So Heather, can you tell us a little bit about your CF experience? As you smile.
And for our listeners who don't know, CF means a clinical fellowship year. And this is the year where SLPs, speech language pathologists, come out of their graduate training, and then they get like practical training on the job. So
Yeah.
tell us about that.
And I'll say just very quickly that I have a number of SLPs in my voice studio taking lessons, and I get to watch from the sidelines that process. And it is stress ridden. It is high pressure. There are, if you compare the amount of CFs to the amount of people who need them, finding a placement is no small task. So can you tell us, Heather, a little bit about your experience with your CF and what you learned and figured out through that process? And take us through that.
Yes. Yeah. So going into the field of speech pathology, I knew I wanted to do voice. That was the only thing I wanted to do. Like many of us going into voice. And I thought that it was black and white. It was either I do my CF at a voice place and I do voice, or I don't and I failed and I can't do voice, and that's it. So I didn't have the opportunity to do a voice placement per se when I was in grad school. I did get some experience doing voice in like the hospital setting and the private practice setting, but I didn't have that experience. And I thought, of course, with that, I didn't have the voice placement. So now I'm not going to have the voice CF, and then I'm not going to be able to do voice. And it was like, great, what am I even doing? I'm wasting all this money and I'm going to school and I can't do what I'm meant to be doing. So I was just completely heartbroken. And of course I continued, and I did my CF at a private practice, and it was the closest thing I could get to voice.
So what you really wanted, or what would have been ideal, would have been like at an academic medical center, a voice clinic, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
And I had interviewed for quite a few of them, but without that voice placement, it was really, really hard to get in there. So I ended up doing my CF at a private practice, and they didn't specialize in anything. It was a
general practice.
A general private practice. So there were, mostly kids, some adults, and any voice clients that came in was like, can they please be on my caseload? This is what I want to be doing. And so nobody else wanted to do voice. So it actually worked out. So I ended up seeing all of the voice clients that came in, and those were the clients that really lit me up. That was like what kept me going. I was like, okay, I'm going to do my CF, and then I'm going to get a voice job, and it's going to be great. And that's what happened. But so I went through my CF, and honestly, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I hadn't done that CF, because all of the voice clients that came in happened to be seeking gender affirming voice care. And when I saw those clients, I can't even describe the alignment that I felt. I felt connected. I felt authentic. I felt like I was coming home. And it was like a sign from the universe that this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I didn't know why, but I didn't question it. And I just said, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then those clients referred other clients, and then those clients referred others, and it built up, and now that's what I'm doing today.
Awesome.
And then after my CF, I ended up getting a voice job.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back to LA and did more voice. So, so yeah, anyone out there who's interested in voice and you didn't have that CF or you don't have that CF, you can forge your own path. You don't need permission from anybody to do voice and to do what you're meant to be doing.
Right. Right, because there is some gatekeeping within the field in terms of experiences that you can have, right? And unfortunately, one experience leads to another. And if you miss that first one, you're kind of like left out of that pathway. But there are other ways. Like, I love your story because even that, I felt like how you kind of regrouped and, you went to the Summer Vocology Institute, you got more specialized training in vocology, you had your bachelor's in music, you had lots of other things that set you up for success. So it's not like all of that was wasted, And you got yourself good mentorship, which created other opportunities for you. And I just think that this kind of out of the box thinking is what got you to your goals, and it will get anyone to your goals. You don't have to be at the mercy of this pathway that can be a little bit narrow because not everyone.
Really an activity in agency
Yes.
of saying like my future doesn't rest, like this one CF, this one experience can't define my entire life.
Right.
It's like, no, you define your entire life.
Right.
I love that. Reminds me of the what is it, Einstein, who said like a mind stretch never returns to its original shape. So each thing just makes us richer and richer, and then you take that richness to the experience, to the jobs that you have. So I think that that's amazing.
You were looking to specialize in voice at a very young age. Think about how young you were coming out of your master's and going into the workforce. This is a very young age to specialize. And like once you specialize in voice, then it's hard to get other experiences within the field. There is value to having a general CF so that you can be sure that you know what you want to do. And I think when you're working in a voice clinic or with voice patients, people aren't one-sided or one-dimensional. They often have other pieces going on,
right?
Like trauma, for example.
Yes. Yep. Or voice and stuttering, or voice and aphasia, or voice and social pragmatic needs, or whatever the person wants to work on.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that we were talking about is the idea of silenced voices. Can you talk a little bit about if a voice, first of all, what does it mean to have a voice that's silenced? I mean, are we just talking about actual volume? Are we talking about other layers to that? And then the second thing is what are possible pathways forward if that's the scenario?
Great question. Yeah, so a silenced voice can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be a feeling of helplessness or lack of agency or power. It can be in a medical setting where you're sharing how you feel and you're being told how you feel and that you're wrong. There are so many things that can silence us, right? There's so many experiences and beliefs and traumatic events that can silence us. And I'm thinking of, the clients that I work with, and almost 99.9% of my clients have had experiences where someone told them not to sing or not to speak, or that their voice sounds terrible, or their voice, they're not a good singer, and they'll never be a good singer. And we hold on to those beliefs. We hold them in our physical bodies, even if we're not consciously aware of those beliefs. So there's different experiences that silence us, and we learn from those experiences, and they silence us. We become silenced. So there are different practices, and I created my own approach for unlocking a silenced voice, and it always starts with the nervous system. So it always starts with practices to signal to the body that it's safe to use your voice. And that can include breath work, sound healing, movement, working with beliefs and responding to beliefs, speaking new beliefs aloud, screaming new beliefs aloud, physically stepping into these new beliefs that you want to be holding about your voice. Another step in that process is tuning in. It's how I began my healing process, tuning into what the pain or the discomfort or the tension is telling you. If tension had a voice, what would it be saying? If your pain had a voice, what would it be saying? So tuning into that, thanking your tension and your pain for keeping you safe, and then using somatic practices to release that when the individual's ready. And of course, evidence-based voice therapy and voice pedagogy techniques to physically unlock the voice, massage, movement, yoga. I think I said yoga like 12 times because yoga has just been so healing for me. And it's a process, but you start to feel the healing process happening.
What I love is when you were just going through that list, it just shows us that there's options, that there's hope, that there's opportunity to experience a level of freedom and fullness that we know is in us. And you just listed a whole bunch of different options. And so that idea of staying stuck, I think, is a very fearful thing to comprehend. And if we can let that go, and realize, wow, there's paths forward.
So in our final segment, agentic practices, we'd like to hone in on one particular practice, which is shared stories and lived experiences. Thank you for sharing your lived experience within the field and with trauma and loss of vocal agency. And I know you wanted to highlight shared stories and lived experiences, which aligns with the 6 key principles of a trauma-informed approach. So tell us what that looks like in your professional practice as you are working to unlock silenced voices.
Yeah. So when I began sharing my own story with my patients, and of course, when appropriate and when there's a therapeutic benefit, I don't just go around and be like, let me tell you my life story. Right. But when I started bringing in the healing modalities that have helped me, and when I started sharing my story with my patients, I noticed a huge shift in the trust and the rapport, and clients reporting more feelings of safety and trustworthiness. And by me sharing my story, it creates a space where they can share their story.
Yeah, like it does help to build trust. It does help to build a rapport, and it does facilitate feelings of safety. I just love all of those things that you underscored. That was great. And you're right, it wouldn't be appropriate to go sharing your story with everyone, but
right.
We all have relationship skills. Some are better than some are worse. So you read the room and you see, when would this story be appropriate to share? Yeah.
Exactly.
I cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and I know for me, when I'm being seen by a medical professional and I know they've been through what I've been through, there's that extra level of trust
Yes.
and rapport and motivation from me, because I see that they've overcome it
Right.
and what they did worked for them, so that could work for me. Or just knowing that there is an answer and there is hope.
To wrap up, I'll share, because I've shared that I've had a pulmonary embolism before, and while I was training with Kristen, and she kind of heard that things were not right with my use of breath. And when I finally went to the doctor, I was like in a critical state, like having shortness of breath. And so I called her. She had given me her cell phone. She said, "Call me if anything." And I called her and I told her it was happening. And she told me, "You have pulmonary embolism. Get to the emergency room." And she saved my life. And the reason why she suspected that I had pulmonary embolism was because she had had one. She's a young doctor, like in her early 30s. And she had had a similar experience that I had, having traveled and developed clots that went to her lungs. And like we were able to connect on that. And it's like you said, that shared experience got me to trust her. I was like, I better go do what she says, and the greatest doctor I've ever had, because we had that connection. So,
And that idea that there's somebody who can help you see around corners,
yes.
that it doesn't, I think that idea of just helping somebody soften the path with using your experience.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
So I'm going to go ahead and close unless you have any last things to say, Heather. No pressure.
Thank you for thank you for having me. And to anyone who's listening who can relate to any of our stories, just know that there is hope and you can find your voice again. And thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. So in this episode, we discussed how our voices become silenced and the healing process for unlocking a silenced voice. We also discussed the power of shared stories and lived experiences as part of the healing journey. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing your lived experience and how you support others in their healing journeys. To our listeners, this is our final episode of season 1. We're going to take some time off. So until then, take care.